The rain fell over Manhattan, drumming softly on the rooftops and streets, painting the city in shades of silver and gray. Inside the elite gallery on Fifth Avenue, the latest exhibition of rare masterpieces had been the talk of the town. Among them, one painting stood out, a work by the late master Leonardo Virelli, a piece that had eluded collectors for decades. Now, it was missing. Benjamin Hart arrived at the gallery just as the storm intensified, stepping out of his classic black sedan and pulling his coat tighter. The curator, a nervous man named Harold Finch, met him at the entrance. His hands trembled slightly, a thin sheen of sweat across his brow. "Detective Hart, thank you for coming so quickly," Finch said, his voice strained. It's gone." "The Virelli." Benjamin's gray-blue eyes narrowed as he scanned the empty space where the painting had hung. The frame remained, but the canvas was gone, leaving behind only the faint smell of varnish and the cold air of the exhibition hall. "No forced entry?" he asked, crouching to examine the floor for footprints or disturbances. "None," Finch replied. "Cameras show the hall was empty. Alarm systems, disabled. We're at a complete loss." Benjamin stood, tapping his chin thoughtfully. Professional work. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing, the cameras, the alarms, even the motion sensors. This wasn't a crime of opportunity. This was planned. He moved through the gallery with quiet precision, observing every detail, the placement of sculptures, the faint smudges on the floor, the subtle disarray of velvet ropes. Nothing was out of reach for his trained eyes. He noticed a tiny fleck of paint, the corner of a glove snagged on a velvet stand, and a faint scuff mark near the exit, minor details that told a story only he could read. Outside, the storm raged, lightning illuminating the city in sudden bursts. Benjamin reviewed the footage from the security cameras. Each sequence was meticulously edited, gaps perfectly timed, movements erased. The thief had anticipated every possible obstacle. But Benjamin was not so easily fooled. He considered the motives. Theft for profit seemed too obvious. This painting wasn't just valuable, it was famous, iconic. To remove it and sell it would attract attention from every corner of the globe. The act felt personal, deliberate, perhaps revenge, perhaps a message, or maybe an elaborate game. Benjamin traced his thoughts to the gallery's visitors. Who had been present during the days prior? Who had access to the hall after hours? The network of curators, collectors, and staff began to map itself in his mind, each person a node of possibility, each relationship a potential key. Then he spotted it, a small, folded note tucked behind a sculpture, almost invisible. It read simply, "The masterpiece lives where shadows linger." A challenge. A clue. Benjamin's lips curved in the faintest smile. The thief wasn't merely stealing a painting, he was inviting him into a game, a psychological duel. He pocketed the note and glanced around the gallery once more. Somewhere out there, someone was watching, anticipating his moves, testing his intellect. Benjamin Hart understood one undeniable truth: this would not be a simple recovery. The path ahead would require every ounce of observation, deduction, and cunning he possessed. As he stepped into the rain, the city lights reflected in puddles around his polished shoes. The game had begun. And Benjamin Hart, with all his skill and experience, was ready to follow the shadows. Benjamin Hart moved through the rain-soaked streets of Manhattan, his mind already dissecting the puzzle. The note, "The masterpiece lives where shadows linger," pulsed in his thoughts, a cryptic message designed to provoke, to bait him into action. Every step, every reflection in the wet pavement, seemed to carry meaning. He arrived at a discreet cafe in the Upper East Side, a place frequented by art collectors who preferred anonymity over spectacle. It was here that Benjamin had arranged a meeting with Victor Langford, a wealthy collector whose reputation was as enigmatic as the treasures he kept. Langford was known to acquire art through legitimate means, yet whispers suggested a more shadowy side. "Detective Hart," Langford greeted, standing as Benjamin approached. His tailored suit was impeccable, and a faint smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. I hear the Virelli is missing. Yes, Benjamin said, scanning the cafe for anything out of place. And I intend to find it. Langford gestured to a corner table, where the light was dimmer. Follow me. I may have information that could help, but it comes at a price, discretion, above all. Benjamin nodded. He had dealt with people like Langford before, charm and wealth often masked ruthlessness. Sitting down, he observed the man closely, subtle hand movements, the faint twitch of his eyes, the calculated inflection in his voice. Everything about Langford spoke of control and awareness. The painting you seek, Langford began, was never meant to leave certain circles. Its value is not just monetary. Its theft is symbolic, a message more than a crime. He paused, allowing Benjamin a moment to absorb the words. You are dealing with someone who knows the art world intimately, someone who knows you are looking. Benjamin raised an eyebrow. A professional, then. Someone with access, influence, and the intellect to orchestrate this flawlessly. I already suspected as much. Langford's smile widened slightly. Intuition, Mr. Hard. That is your greatest weapon, and perhaps your greatest danger. The person you seek thrives in shadow and subtlety. They leave traces only the observant will see. Consider every move you make carefully, one misstep and the trail vanishes. Benjamin nodded, his thoughts already racing. Every collector, every curator, every staff member in the gallery became a potential link in the chain. But Langford's warning was more than general caution, it was insight into the mind of a man who orchestrated a complex game. After leaving the cafe, Benjamin began his methodical investigation of the gallery's staff and visitors. He retraced the security logs, cross-referenced schedules, and noted inconsistencies in statements. A subtle pattern began to emerge, a recurring visitor, someone who had been seen observing the gallery long before the theft, someone who seemed to vanish whenever cameras were active. At his loft, Benjamin laid out photographs, catalog cards, and notes across his grand piano. Each detail, no matter how minor, connected in a network only he could perceive. He noticed that the missing painting's provenance was tied to several private collectors, men and women who would do anything to protect or acquire it. But one name kept recurring, like a heartbeat through the chaos, Adrian Voss. Voss was elusive, wealthy, and known for collecting art that others considered untouchable. Rumors suggested he had connections in every corner of the black market, yet no official record tied him to any crime. Benjamin understood immediately, if Voss was involved, recovering the Virelli would be as much about psychological warfare as physical pursuit. That night, Benjamin sat at the piano, playing a slow melody to focus his mind. The rain tapped against the windows in rhythm with his thoughts. The shadows in the city seemed to move, almost in response to his calculations. Every subtlety mattered, every glance, every word, every shadow in the gallery or on the streets might be the key to finding the stolen masterpiece. He knew the game had only just begun. And the further he delved, the more dangerous it became. Someone was watching, anticipating his moves, and the challenge was not just to find the painting but to outsmart a mind that thrived in darkness. Benjamin Hard lit a cigar, inhaling deeply, letting the smoke swirl and mingle with the mist outside. The trail was faint but present, and he could feel the tension coiling around every step he took. The Virelli painting had vanished into shadows, but Benjamin knew, he would find it. And when he did, he would uncover the mind behind the theft, piece by piece, move by move. The city outside remained indifferent, unaware of the quiet intellectual duel unfolding within its rain-streaked streets. But Benjamin Hard never underestimated shadows, and tonight, the shadows were beginning to speak. The morning fog hung low over the streets of Manhattan, diffusing the city lights into a muted haze. Benjamin Hard walked past the sleek glass facades of luxury buildings, the rain from last night still pooling in uneven patches on the sidewalks. He carried a leather satchel, containing sketches, catalog cards, and a meticulous notebook of observations. Every step was measured, every glance deliberate, he was tracking shadows, and the shadows were beginning to move. His first lead came unexpectedly. A gallery employee, young and nervous, had been caught on a security camera lingering near the Virelli display days before the theft. Nothing illegal in isolation, yet Benjamin's instincts told him there was more to the story. He arranged a discreet meeting in a quiet cafe tucked away on a side street, away from cameras and curious eyes. "Detective Hard?" the young man asked, voice quivering. His name was Marcus Lee, a part-time curator and intern with a keen eye but a lack of confidence. I don't know if I should say anything." Benjamin's gray-blue eyes fixed on him. "Everything you say stays between us, Marcus. But you must tell me everything you remember. Every detail matters." Marcus hesitated, then spoke. "There was someone who came often. Not a visitor, exactly. He asked questions, but not about the paintings themselves. He wanted to know who handled them, who moved them, who catalogued them. And sometimes, he left behind strange notes, folded scraps of paper with symbols or lines, like music but, not music. I didn't know who to tell. I thought it was nothing." Benjamin nodded slowly, taking notes in silence. "You're helping more than you realize. Can you show me these scraps?" They returned to the gallery after hours. Marcus retrieved a small bundle of papers hidden in a drawer behind the curator's desk. Each was carefully folded, bearing cryptic symbols, sketches of frames, and peculiar annotations. Benjamin examined them, his mind piecing together a pattern that others would overlook, a sequence, almost musical, that seemed to map movement, access points, and timing. "This isn't just a message," Benjamin murmured. "It's a blueprint. Whoever left these was planning something, methodically, and they knew the gallery better than anyone." He traced each symbol and line with his finger, reconstructing the route through the building and noting moments where security was weakest. The handwriting and annotations suggested an insider, someone with access, someone observant, and someone bold. Benjamin considered the implications. If the thief had insider knowledge, they had to be connected to either the gallery staff or the collectors who frequented it. And if it was a collector, the theft was personal, deliberate, and likely motivated by revenge, pride, or obsession. Outside, the fog thickened, and Benjamin lit a cigar, inhaling deeply as he absorbed the weight of the clues. The city around him seemed quiet, yet alive with potential threats and hidden eyes. Every intersection, every alleyway could hide someone watching, waiting to move before he did. He returned to his loft, spreading the scraps across the grand piano, letting the symbols, sketches, and notations form a web only he could decipher. The pattern began to emerge, a recurring reference to a private auction house, a series of letters forming a cipher, and subtle indications pointing toward one particular collector, Adrian Voss. Voss's reputation was formidable. Wealthy, reclusive, and notoriously private, he had influence in every corner of the art world. Rumors suggested he was ruthless in acquiring coveted pieces, yet no one had ever tied him to theft, until now, perhaps. Benjamin's mind raced, calculating possibilities, risks, and strategies. Voss was clever, but Benjamin was cleverer. Hours passed in silence, punctuated only by the occasional creak of the loft and the crackle of the cigar. Benjamin reconstructed the timeline, analyzed the patterns, and identified the weak points in both the gallery and Voss's network. The first lead was clear: Adrian Voss was the key. The next challenge would be approaching him without alerting the collector that he was under scrutiny. Benjamin leaned back, eyes narrowing. The game had begun in earnest. He had a lead, a path through the shadows, and the determination to follow it wherever it might go. Adrian Voss was no ordinary criminal, and this theft was no ordinary case. But Benjamin Hart thrived in the shadows, reading intentions, predicting actions, and seeing the unseen. As the city lights flickered through the fog, Benjamin's resolve hardened. The first lead had been found, and with it, the chase into the depths of ambition, obsession, and betrayal had begun. Benjamin Hart had followed the trail from the gallery to the dimly lit streets of the city's art underworld. Manhattan at night was a different world, alleys narrow and shadowed, walls covered in graffiti and remnants of forgotten posters, the scent of rain mingling with exhaust and damp concrete. Somewhere in these shadows was the network responsible for the disappearance of the Virelli masterpiece. His first stop was a discreet cafe known to host private collectors and underground transactions. The exterior looked unremarkable, just another corner eatery, but Benjamin knew better. Behind the peeling paint and flickering neon sign, whispers of stolen treasures passed quietly between cups of bitter espresso. Inside, the room hummed with quiet conversations. Benjamin observed without drawing attention, noting the subtle gestures, exchanged glances, and the way certain men lingered near specific tables. Each nuance told a story, alliances, warnings, and hidden agendas. He met a contact, Lena Caro, a former art dealer who had moved from legal auctions to black market dealings but retained her meticulous record-keeping. "I know why you're here, Mr. Hard," she said in a low voice, motioning him to a secluded corner. "Voss's name is all over this. He's involved, but he's careful. He doesn't touch the painting directly, that's why it disappeared without a trace." Benjamin listened, noting every word. "So the painting isn't gone?" he asked, eyebrow raised. "Not yet," Lena replied. "Voss hides his acquisitions in safe houses, rotates them, and sometimes auctions them privately to trusted collectors. The problem is, nobody outside his circle knows the locations. And anyone who tries to track him is dealt with." Benjamin's eyes narrowed. "I imagine he doesn't leave many mistakes." "Very few," Lena said, her voice serious. "But one always exists. And sometimes the smallest oversight can unravel the entire network." Benjamin leaned back, considering the challenge. If he was to retrieve the Virelli, he needed not only to find it but to understand Voss's psychology, predict his moves, anticipate his precautions, and exploit the tiniest flaw. Lena provided him with a map of potential safe houses, coded with symbols only insiders would recognize, along with recent anonymous transactions. Every lead was a thread, and Benjamin intended to trace each one. Leaving the cafe, he moved through the city like a shadow himself, blending with the damp streets. He followed the faint patterns of trade, an unmarked van parked too long near a warehouse, a delivery disguised as mundane office supplies, a man entering a building with a face half covered by a scarf. Each observation added a piece to the puzzle, revealing a network that operated in silence, precision, and secrecy. Back at his loft, Benjamin analyzed Lena's information. He constructed a timeline of Voss's movements, cross-referencing it with security footage, gallery logs, and anonymous tips. A pattern emerged: the painting had been moved twice in the past week, each time to a location chosen for maximum security and minimal exposure. But one detail stood out: a courier who had made a single mistake, a misrecorded delivery, a timestamp slightly off, a slip unnoticed by all but the most observant. Benjamin traced this courier, following the network to a warehouse near the East River. The building appeared abandoned, but Benjamin knew appearances were deceptive. Inside, it could be anything: a dead end, a trap, or the first glimpse of the stolen masterpiece. He paused outside, assessing the situation. Security cameras, guard shifts, potential traps. Benjamin had to be precise. One misstep could alert Voss, and the trail would vanish forever. He lit a cigar, letting the smoke curl in the damp air, and mentally rehearsed his approach. Observation, calculation, and patience would be his allies. Benjamin Hard entered the warehouse at midnight, the faint glow of his flashlight revealing stacked crates, shadows, and the faint scent of varnish and dust. Somewhere among these crates lay a clue, a piece of the puzzle that could lead him directly to Voss and the stolen Virelli painting. The city outside remained unaware, the streets slick with rain, yet Benjamin moved with the confidence of a man who could see what others could not. Every shadow was a potential path, every sound a potential warning, and every small detail a key to solving the mystery. Tonight, he was deeper in the network than ever before. The black market was only the beginning, and the game was just starting to reveal its true complexity. Benjamin Hard stepped lightly through the warehouse, the echo of his boots muted by the damp concrete floor. The crates were stacked high, obscuring corners and creating dark alleys between them. Every shadow could hide a clue, or a threat. He paused, noting the faint scuff marks on the floor, traces that suggested someone had recently moved between crates, carefully, almost ritualistically. His mind raced. The black market network was vast, but it had one weakness: human error. And Benjamin intended to find it. He crouched near a stack of crates, observing the tiny signs, fingerprints in dust, the alignment of labels, subtle abrasions that indicated how boxes had been handled. Each detail was a word in a story only he could read. Then he noticed movement, a figure slipping through the shadows, cautious but deliberate. Benjamin did not call out. Instead, he followed, silent as a whisper, matching the rhythm of the person's steps. The figure stopped at a crate marked with a faded symbol, crouched, and retrieved a small bundle of papers. Benjamin recognized the handwriting instantly, the same cryptic script found at the gallery and in the cafe with Lena. The figure turned, a young woman, her eyes wide with surprise, frozen for a heartbeat before she realized she had been spotted. Who are you?" she stammered. "Benjamin Hard," he said calmly, stepping fully into the dim light. "I'm here to help. And I believe you can help me, too." Her gaze shifted between him and the crates, wary, calculating. I shouldn't be here," she said, her voice trembling. "They'll." "Who?" Benjamin asked, his tone firm but measured. "Who are they?" She swallowed, glancing at the papers in her hand. "The collectors, the ones trading stolen art. Adrian Voss, he's dangerous. But I know where the painting is, or at least part of the trail." Benjamin's heart rate remained steady, patience and observation were his allies. "Then you're going to tell me everything. Start from the beginning." She introduced herself as Clara Devine, a former assistant to one of the private collectors. She had infiltrated Voss's network to recover pieces he had stolen but had grown trapped in the web of secrecy and threats. Her access had been crucial, only she knew the locations of several safe houses, the timing of transfers, and the subtle codes used in the black market communications. Benjamin listened, his mind cataloging every detail. Every lie, hesitation, or omission would be noticed. Clara spoke of meetings in hidden basements, crates transported under the cover of night, and a system of signals that warned Voss of intruders. But she also revealed the first true opportunity: one safe house would be unguarded for a short window, the painting temporarily exposed as it awaited transport to a private auction. Benjamin's gray-blue eyes gleamed. "Then we have a chance," he said. "But timing, precision, and observation will be critical. One wrong step, and Voss will disappear into the shadows, along with the Virelli." They worked together, piecing together schedules, identifying gaps, and predicting guard rotations. Every detail was cross-checked, every route analyzed. Clara proved invaluable, her insider knowledge complementing Benjamin's analytical mind. He observed her not only for the facts but for her instincts. She had survived in this world for months, learning to read threats, anticipate moves, and maintain composure under pressure. As night fell, Benjamin and Clara prepared to move. The warehouse seemed to hold its breath, shadows stretching like fingers, ready to conceal or reveal. Benjamin glanced at her, nodding once. "Stay focused. Trust me, and stay close." The night outside was silent, save for the distant hum of the city. Benjamin's thoughts were entirely on the safe house, on the route, and on the psychology of Adrian Voss. The collector was cunning, but he had underestimated the combination of inside knowledge and deductive skill. Benjamin Hart adjusted his coat, feeling the weight of the case settle comfortably on his shoulders. The first steps toward reclaiming the stolen masterpiece had been taken, the insider had been identified, and the path forward was clear. The game was escalating, and the shadows were no longer just empty spaces, they were the theater of strategy, anticipation, and intellect. Tonight, the hunt truly began. And Benjamin knew that once the painting was found, there would still be one final confrontation with Adrian Voss, a duel of minds, patience, and precision that would test every ounce of his skill. The city slept under a heavy blanket of fog and rain, streets slick with water reflecting the dim glow of streetlights. Benjamin Hart and Clara Devine moved silently through narrow alleys, their footsteps muffled by the mist. Every corner, every shadow could conceal danger. A misstep here could compromise the mission and alert Adrian Voss. Benjamin kept his eyes sharp, noting the subtle signs of surveillance, reflections in windows, the faint hum of engines, the occasional figure standing just beyond clear sight. "They're cautious," he murmured. "And they watch everything. We need to move deliberately, predictably, yet remain unpredictable." Clara nodded, gripping the bundle of notes she had carefully compiled. "This is the location," she whispered, pointing to a nondescript warehouse near the East River, the site she had once helped organize as part of Voss's network. Benjamin observed the building, its exterior unimposing, paint peeling, metal doors rusted, but the details betrayed its true purpose. Windows bricked up from the inside, faint scuff marks on the steps, and subtle inconsistencies in the surrounding environment revealed signs of recent activity. Benjamin crouched behind a dumpster, crouching low to study the security patterns. 2 guards rotate every 30 minutes. Cameras cover the north and east sides, but there's a blind spot along the southern wall. "That's our entry point." He pointed, drawing an invisible map in the misty air. "Timing is everything. One slip and Voss will vanish, and the painting along with him." They approached the southern wall cautiously, Benjamin checking the locks and inspecting the hinges. A faint scratch on the metal door indicated recent tampering, not enough to compromise it, but a clue to the movement of the guards. He retrieved a small toolkit, silently working to disengage the alarm system. His hands moved with practiced precision, aware of every subtle sound and vibration. Inside, the warehouse smelled of varnish, dust, and something faintly metallic. Crates were stacked high, each labeled with cryptic codes, familiar only to those initiated into Voss's network. Benjamin's mind mapped the space like a chessboard, identifying likely routes and hiding places. Every crate, every shadow could conceal the masterpiece, or a trap. They moved deeper into the warehouse, stepping lightly, ears attuned to the faintest sounds. A distant clatter echoed through the cavernous space, making Clara tense. Benjamin held up a hand, signaling her to stay calm. He analyzed the sound, determining it was a minor shift of crates, not a person. Small details like these would determine success or failure. Finally, in a secluded corner, he spotted it, a crate slightly out of alignment with the others, its label faintly worn. Benjamin crouched, examining it carefully. The scratches on the edges, the dust patterns, and the subtle indentations suggested movement. Someone had been here recently. Carefully, he pried open the crate, revealing the Virelli painting, wrapped in protective layers. Clara exhaled quietly, relief washing over her features. "It's really here," she whispered. Benjamin's expression remained calm, but inside, a surge of satisfaction mingled with tension. They were not safe yet. Retrieving the painting was one thing, exiting the warehouse undetected was another. He instructed Clara to follow his lead, moving methodically through the blind spots, retracing the patterns he had observed. Outside, the fog seemed thicker, the city more oppressive. Guards shifted according to their rotations, and Benjamin timed their movements perfectly. With silent coordination, he and Clara navigated the perimeter, carrying the painting carefully, avoiding cameras, and slipping through the southern exit into the shadowed streets beyond. Once clear of immediate danger, Benjamin paused to assess. The painting was secure, but the real challenge remained, confronting Adrian Voss, the mastermind, and understanding the motives that had driven him to orchestrate such a complex theft. As they disappeared into the night, the East River glinting faintly through the fog, Benjamin knew the shadows would continue to shift, and the game was far from over. But for now, the first tangible victory had been achieved, the masterpiece was in his possession, the first layer of the puzzle solved, and the path toward justice slowly emerging from the darkness. Benjamin lit a cigar, inhaling deeply, letting the smoke mingle with the damp night air. Each step forward, each observation, brought him closer to Voss, and the ultimate resolution of a game where intellect, patience, and precision would decide the outcome. Benjamin Hard returned to his loft, the Virelli painting carefully wrapped and secured. The city outside glimmered with wet reflections, indifferent to the quiet victory achieved in the shadows. Yet Benjamin knew this was only the beginning. Retrieving the masterpiece had been tactical, now came the strategic confrontation with Adrian Voss, the mind behind the theft. He spread the notes, sketches, and observations across the grand piano, methodically analyzing every clue. Each symbol, each rotation of the safe houses, every minor inconsistency in Voss's network painted a larger picture. Voss was not just a collector, he was an architect of psychological games, a strategist who manipulated perception as deftly as he moved stolen art. Clara Devine, sitting nearby, watched as Benjamin traced a complex web of movements. "He's careful," she said. "Almost impossible to predict." Benjamin's gray-blue eyes fixed on a series of annotations. Careful, yes. But not infallible. He left a pattern, a rhythm in his movements, a signature. That's what we'll exploit. They devised a plan. Benjamin would lure Voss into a controlled environment, using the recovered painting as bait, while Clara's insider knowledge provided the leverage to anticipate every step. The trap required precision, timing, placement, and psychological manipulation. Any error would alert Voss and send him slipping further into the shadows. The first move involved a private exhibition. Benjamin announced, through carefully orchestrated channels, that the Virelli had been recovered and would be displayed briefly before returning to its owner. The notice was subtle, designed to attract the right eyes without alarming the general public. Voss could not resist. The painting was more than an object, it was a symbol of control, obsession, and pride. As the night of the exhibition approached, Benjamin prepared meticulously. Security measures were discreet but effective, cameras placed to observe without drawing attention, guards positioned where their presence would not be obvious, and subtle cues embedded in the setup to indicate the presence of outsiders. Every element was deliberate. When Voss arrived, his presence was almost imperceptible, blending with other collectors and patrons. Benjamin observed him closely, noting the subtle changes in posture, the quick glances at the painting, the faint tightening of fists, a language only a trained observer could read. This was the mind at work, calculating, controlling, anticipating. Clara stayed close to Benjamin, providing whispered insights on Voss's behavior. "He's nervous," she said. "Not about the painting itself, but about being observed. He knows someone is watching." Benjamin nodded, acknowledging her insight. He remained outwardly calm, masking the anticipation building beneath his composed exterior. Every step, every gesture, every interaction was a move in a carefully orchestrated game. Finally, the moment arrived. Benjamin subtly maneuvered Voss closer to a side room under the guise of showing the painting to select patrons. The room was designed to control the environment, limited exits, controlled lighting, and a vantage point for observation. The trap was set. Voss paused, sensing something amiss. He scanned the room, instinct sharp, eyes darting. But Benjamin had anticipated this. The cues, the placement of people, even the timing of sound, all were part of the plan. Voss, calculating, paused. And that pause, brief as it was, opened the door to confrontation. Benjamin's voice cut through the subtle tension, calm and measured. "Adrian Voss," he said, stepping into view, "we need to talk." The collector's eyes met his, a flicker of recognition and understanding passing through them. The game had escalated from shadows to confrontation. Every strategy, every move, every observation led to this moment, the beginning of the final act, where intellect, psychology, and patience would determine who would emerge victorious. Benjamin Hart adjusted his coat, eyes unwavering. The shadows had shifted, and now the confrontation had begun. It was no longer about recovering a painting. It was about outmaneuvering a mind that had orchestrated an elaborate theft and testing the limits of human cunning. The city outside remained indifferent, but inside that quiet room, two minds clashed in silence, each anticipating the other's move. The first step of confrontation had been taken, and the outcome was far from certain. The room was quiet, the air thick with tension as Benjamin Hard faced Adrian Voss. The collector's eyes were sharp, calculating, measuring each nuance in Benjamin's posture, every slight movement, every expression. This was no ordinary confrontation, this was a battle of intellect, a chess game played in real time, each aware of the other's capacity to predict, manipulate, and deceive. Benjamin observed Voss carefully, noting subtle cues, the micro-expressions that flickered across his face, the slight shifts in weight, the hands twitching ever so slightly. Voss was experienced, intelligent, and dangerous, but Benjamin's mind was a step ahead, processing probabilities, anticipating reactions, and analyzing intentions. "You have skill, Mr. Hard," Voss said, his voice smooth but edged with tension. "But skill alone does not recover what I have planned. The painting is only part of the equation." Benjamin's gray-blue eyes remained steady. "Then let's discuss the rest of your equation, shall we?" he replied calmly. His voice, calm and measured, acted as both invitation and challenge. Voss smirked faintly. "You understand the stakes. This is not merely about a painting. It is about control, influence, perception. Each move I make is calculated, and each reaction is a test." Benjamin leaned slightly forward, fingers tapping lightly on the edge of the table. "And yet every test has a flaw, a moment where even the most careful calculation can be exploited. That is where I come in." The duel escalated subtly. Words became weapons, pauses became signals, and silence carried more weight than speech. Benjamin asked questions designed to provoke thought and misstep, while Voss responded with measured deflections, attempting to maintain psychological dominance. Each recognized the other's capacity for observation and deduction, the unspoken understanding of an opponent who could anticipate nearly every action. Benjamin noted a faint pattern in Voss's speech, a rhythm that hinted at impatience, a desire for control over chaos. He subtly mirrored gestures, tested reactions, and dropped misleading cues, drawing Voss into a state of careful calculation. The collector's eyes flicked with recognition, momentarily betraying irritation, a subtle victory. Clara, observing quietly, realized the depth of the confrontation. "He's testing you," she whispered. "Not physically, but mentally. Every word, every glance, he's probing your limits." Benjamin nodded imperceptibly. "And I'm responding in kind. This is a duel of minds, Clara. Patience is as vital as perception." Hours passed in a delicate balance of observation and measured engagement. Benjamin subtly guided the conversation toward the stolen painting, probing Voss's motives, and exposing cracks in his narrative. Each revelation was a calculated move, building toward the inevitable exposure of the theft and the intentions behind it. Finally, a critical slip occurred. Voss, momentarily overconfident, revealed a small detail, a misstatement about the painting's location and the timing of its removal. Benjamin's mind processed the information instantly, connecting it to prior observations, the insider notes, and patterns in Voss's network. "That's it," Benjamin said quietly, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "You've given me exactly what I needed." The psychological duel had reached its turning point. Every moment of observation, every subtle cue, every ounce of deductive reasoning had brought Benjamin to this advantage. Voss realized the shift, the silent acknowledgement passing between them, the game was turning. Benjamin Hard straightened, his presence commanding the room. "It ends tonight, Adrian. The painting, your network, your games, all of it. The city may be indifferent, but I am not." Voss's eyes narrowed, calculating his remaining options. Benjamin knew that while the confrontation had escalated to its peak, the final moves were yet to come. Strategy, patience, and intellect would determine the outcome, and only one mind could emerge victorious from the shadows. As the night deepened, the duel continued, a silent symphony of observation, anticipation, and manipulation. And Benjamin Hard understood, with unwavering clarity, that victory required not only recovery of the painting but complete mastery of the psychological battlefield before him. Benjamin Hard spent the early hours planning the final stage. The psychological duel with Adrian Voss had revealed crucial insights, the collector's patterns, the subtle weaknesses in his network, and the vulnerabilities masked by his calculated arrogance. Benjamin knew that one carefully orchestrated trap could conclude the game, but precision, timing, and anticipation were paramount. He enlisted Clara Devine to coordinate the logistics. Using her insider knowledge, they selected a discreet location for the confrontation, a private gallery, its lighting dim and controlled, cameras hidden but operational, and exits limited. The space was perfect, confined enough to control movement, yet flexible enough to manipulate perception. Everything must go perfectly, Benjamin said, surveying the setup. One error, and Voss vanishes into shadows again, along with the painting. Clara nodded, setting up cues and signals. "I've prepared the rotations and the personnel," she said. "They'll think it's a routine display, but we'll control the environment completely." As evening approached, Benjamin and Clara prepared the recovered Virelli painting for display. Its presence was bait, subtle but irresistible to Voss. The placement was deliberate, with minor imperfections in lighting and positioning designed to draw attention exactly where Benjamin intended. Every shadow, every reflection, every angle had been calculated to manipulate perception. When Voss arrived, he moved with his usual calculated grace, scanning the room, noting the subtle cues, assessing the lighting and positioning. His expression remained calm, but Benjamin noted the micro-expressions, a flicker of curiosity, a tightening of the jaw, a shift in stance. He was intrigued, cautious, and slightly unsettled, precisely the state Benjamin aimed to induce. Benjamin engaged him in casual conversation, guiding Voss toward the painting. Every word, every gesture was a strategic move, designed to elicit reactions and draw the collector deeper into the controlled environment. Voss, confident but wary, followed the cues, unaware of the careful orchestration surrounding him. Then Benjamin signaled Clara. The lights dimmed subtly, isolating Voss in a section of the gallery. Cameras recorded every angle, capturing reactions and confirming presence. The doors, previously unnoticed, were now monitored, ensuring that escape was impossible without detection. "You've underestimated the subtlety of observation, Adrian," Benjamin said quietly, his voice calm, measured, but carrying authority. "Every move you've made, every misstep, every hint of overconfidence, it has led you here." Voss's eyes narrowed, scanning the environment, weighing options. But Benjamin had anticipated each possible response. Every path, every glance, every reaction had been pre-analyzed. The trap was complete, a controlled space, surveillance, calculated cues, and a psychological advantage firmly in Benjamin's favor. Finally, Benjamin addressed the motive. The painting, while valuable, was never about money. This was a game, a challenge. But every game has rules, and every player a limit. Your network, your secrecy, your manipulations, they end tonight. Voss hesitated, realizing the extent of Benjamin's preparation. The realization struck him with the weight of inevitability. He had been drawn into a carefully constructed web, his pride and intellect used against him. Benjamin's presence, calm and commanding, contrasted with the controlled environment, revealing every vulnerability in the collector's psychological armor. As the trap closed, Benjamin noted the subtle tension in Voss's posture, the micro-expressions of concern and recognition, and the slight faltering in his composure. The game had reached its climax. Benjamin's planning, observation, and patience had transformed the shadows into an arena where victory was inevitable. Outside, the city continued its indifferent rhythm, unaware that within a dimly lit gallery, an intellectual duel had culminated in a decisive moment. Benjamin Hard had constructed the trap flawlessly, setting the stage for the final act, resolution, justice, and the recovery of the masterpiece, not just as an object, but as a symbol of mastery over manipulation, secrecy, and human cunning. The dawn broke over Manhattan, the city bathed in a soft golden light that reflected off wet streets and glass towers. Inside the private gallery, Benjamin Hart observed Adrian Voss, now subdued, seated calmly but defeated. The once imposing collector's aura of control had been stripped away, replaced with the quiet acknowledgement of his defeat. Benjamin's presence, meticulous planning, and strategic patience had transformed the room into a stage of resolution. Clara Devine stood nearby, her expression a mix of relief and admiration. "It's finally over," she whispered, her eyes scanning the recovered Virelli painting, which rested safely in its protective wrap. "I didn't think we could actually bring him here." Benjamin's grey-blue eyes remained focused on Voss, who now regarded him with measured acceptance. "It's over only because you allowed the pattern to emerge," Benjamin said, his voice calm but unwavering. "Every move you made, every assumption, led you here. Observation and patience aren't just tools, they're the difference between control and chaos." Voss finally spoke, his voice quiet but deliberate. "You're impressive, Hart. I underestimated you. Perhaps that is my mistake." He paused, reflecting. "The painting, it was never about the object itself. It was about proving that I could orchestrate perfection. And you've undone it." Benjamin leaned against the table, arms crossed, his expression thoughtful. "Perfection exists only in theory. In reality, every system, every plan has flaws. It's how we recognize and exploit them that determines outcome." Clara stepped forward, her voice steady. "We're turning it over to the authorities. The Virelli belongs where it can be preserved, protected, and appreciated, not hidden behind shadows and fear." Voss nodded slowly, the first trace of humility in his demeanor. He had been bested not through brute force, but through intellect, observation, and the subtle art of psychological strategy. Benjamin had outmaneuvered him at every step, anticipating his moves, exploiting weaknesses, and converting the shadows into a theater of justice. Benjamin took a deep breath, finally allowing himself a moment of satisfaction. The painting was secure, the network disrupted, and the mastermind neutralized. But he also recognized the enduring complexity of human behavior, the way ambition, pride, and obsession could intertwine to create chaos. He filed this insight away, adding it to his mental catalog, ready for the next challenge. As the authorities arrived to take Voss into custody, Benjamin carefully documented the recovered painting, noting its condition, placement, and the security measures now in place. Clara assisted, her insider knowledge invaluable in ensuring nothing would be lost or mishandled. Once the formalities were complete, Benjamin stepped outside into the crisp morning air. The city was waking, indifferent to the quiet drama that had unfolded in one of its hidden galleries. Rain had ceased, leaving the streets glistening, a mirror to the early sun. He lit a cigar, inhaling deeply, feeling the tension of the past days begin to dissolve. Observation, deduction, and patience had won the day. The shadows had receded, leaving clarity and resolution in their wake. Clara joined him outside, smiling faintly. "So, what now?" she asked. Benjamin exhaled, the smoke curling in the soft morning light. "Now, the city moves on. The painting returns to its rightful place. And we prepare, because shadows never truly disappear. They only wait for the next challenge." With that, Benjamin Hart walked down the streets of Manhattan, confident, composed, and ready. The game was over, but the pursuit of truth, justice, and understanding of the human mind was eternal. Every detail observed, every subtlety noted, every intellect tested, it was all part of the life he had chosen. And somewhere in the depths of the city, the shadows stirred again, waiting for the next detective who could see, understand, and act where others could not. Benjamin paused at a crosswalk, watching the reflection of the morning sun on puddles. The Virelli was safe, the mastermind subdued, and the city, for now, remained indifferent. But he knew, the shadows were never gone, and neither was his purpose. He smiled faintly, adjusted his coat, and walked on, the city alive around him, and his mind already anticipating the next challenge.